Oh, Hot Topic? When did this open?
Hi, welcome to Hot Topic, the Hot Tub Talk Show. I'm your host, Shannon Bacchus. This is my dad, Mike Schaefer. This is the talk show where two people with opposing point of views sit and talk it out. And if we can't agree, at least we can be in a hot tub, you know? Today, our guest is George Howington.
Hello.
Hi, George.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hi, George.
Cheers.
Cheers.
George, Mike, George.
Nice to meet you.
It's a delight to have you here in the hot tub
Thank
today.
you for having me.
We're in fine form tonight. We had a delicious dinner. We've all become best friends, and now we're going to ruin it.
Absolutely.
George, what's our topic tonight?
Sports.
Very controversial.
I picked the topic of sports, but there's just one topic in sports that's really like kind of more focused right now than anything else, which is the aspect of transgender people in sports and the aspects of it. For me, the biggest thing is there's the whole right now, especially in the collegiate level, people who are transitioning, right? And they're going into the other field. So the biggest example of it right now is the University of Penn woman who was on. I'm sorry,
Leah Thomas.
Yes, who was on the men's team and then obviously transitioned and is now on the women's team competing in the women's events and is absolutely crushing it. And now there's this huge debate on whether Leah Thomas should be allowed to compete or if not allowed to, or just a bunch of basic scenarios of that. And now it's bleeding over into high school level too, where now people are talking about, like, well, if anyone's transitioning within the high school sphere, should that be allowed? Should they be allowed to compete on the other side? Should they not be allowed to? And just really the fairness of that kind of competing level.
What are your general thoughts on?
No, I appreciate George's opening statement, but what's your position?
Well, I'm asking what your position is first.
What's my position? I first have a question. Are we just talking about people who are transitioning, or should people be allowed to compete according to their gender identity?
So you're asking if, like, are they going through hormone therapy or not?
I don't know enough, but what I will tell you is last year, the Connecticut girls track meet was won by someone who identified as a girl but hadn't transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the thing. There's no there's no end game when you're transitioning. It's like, it's not like, well, they're fully cooked now. So,
Yeah.
So, gender identity and the process of transitioning, it's all very fluid and moving, changing all the time.
I guess my question is, in my thought process, I think that, in my opinion, that they should be allowed to compete with whichever side they want to compete with. So that's my opinion on that aspect of it. So, whether it's someone who's just in their identity identifies as that or transitioning over, that they should be allowed to play on either side that they like to play.
Men are genetically stronger than women.
Fight me!
I didn't say it was women.
Yeah.
And particularly when somebody competes with their gender identity, I feel like it's an unfair playing field. All the female athletes who have trained for years and years and years don't have any testosterone in their body, and how can they?
That's not true. That's not true. Women have testosterone in their body, and
At the same level.
yes, and it also fluctuates woman to woman. Like, some women have more testosterone in their genetic makeup than others. Women have testosterone.
Do they have as much as men?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just clearing that up. Women, so I feel like a female athlete has a tremendous physiological disadvantage over anyone who is a male.
Okay. So on in terms of counterpoint to where this argument usually goes, is that it normally goes on to the female aspects of sports.
Yeah, it's less of a controversy when a trans man competes
yes, completing the sport. But then the question I have is that because, in my opinion, because you're just focusing on the focus is only on one side, right? Mm-hmm. So then if the problem becomes if it's decided that men who have transitioned or identify now as female want to go into the sport and we go against it, then it also has to go to the other side as well, if that makes sense. And then it's just, and there's a whole.
My personal opinion is that it doesn't matter much the other way, only because women transitioning to men, even with hormone therapy, are at an enormous disadvantage but to the natural hormones a man has.
Gotcha. And so for my own opinion on that, it's not I'm not thinking about anyone winning. I'm thinking about them competing. I want them to be comfortable with like where they're competing, if that makes sense.
I don't know that you can control that. If you allow someone to compete, they're going to win or lose based on their abilities vis-a-vis their competition.
Right. And in the argument, it's the idea that the men who have transitioned into women or just identify will always win, which is, I don't think can always be the case. Win, right. But that's the idea behind it.
In my opinion, and put it in perspective, Annika Sorenstam was one of the best female golfers in the history of women's professional golf. Mm-hmm. And she got to play in a men's professional tournament and didn't even make the cut, which means she wasn't in the top 156. Best, mm-hmm. You're talking about like the Tiger Woods of women's professional golfers being not as good as Bubba Watson.
Gotcha.
Right.
All people I know.
My opinion, George,
and have heard of,
is that if
you know Tiger Woods.
If you go back to when I was a kid, and I have 4 sisters, mm-hmm. they all had Barbies. In their mind, it was to grow up with the hourglass figure and be a model, mm-hmm. right? And it took years and years and years for society to accept that athletic bodies are good, and women got into sports and excelled at sports and became very comfortable in their own skin, and I don't have to look like a Barbie model to be a success in life. Mm-hmm. And I would be fearful that if you had transitioning men to women competing against them, how are the girls and the women who have trained for years and years to compete going to now feel about themselves because you're telling them we can't compete because somebody else has been put in that potentially has an unfair advantage?
I think the point you brought up is not related to the issue because over the generations of women being more empowered to not just want to define their value based on their body and their physical appearance and finding other ways to value themselves, that I think is different and like not related to A, female athletes being successful, and B, trans people competing in sports, because it's just like a process of becoming empowered and accepted, literally just being women being accepted in society and trans people being accepted in society. Like, it's a process.
Unless if there's a perceived uneven playing field, women stop going into sports altogether.
In my opinion, the biggest thing is that it's such a small amount of people that
trans people are not the majority.
Not the majority, and that's an even smaller amount that are competing in sports. And this the 2 biggest highlights that I know that are like the stipulations that people have on it are with collegiate wins, specifically in female events and high school events, mm-hmm. where it's and typically because of how it's going on the female side of, state events or those kind of events. And the question is always going to become, where does that truly affect like long term? Now, more likely it'll affect long term in the high school athletics, if that makes sense, in regards to scholarships, because sometimes people need those state wins or they need something along those lines to get people to notice them. Now that might harm some people within that race, but for my personal belief, I think that it's too small of a percentage of people who not only are transitioning, but then also competing in the sport to allow it to be a true problem with allowing competing. Because also everyone who is watching will understand that is who's competing.
Like it almost feels like a bigger risk, like to tell a child who is already transitioning and going through who knows what else, to tell them on top of that you can't play a sport that you love.
Or have to go back to a side now because we don't want you on this side, if that makes sense.
To me, it doesn't make sense, but I respect your opinion. And I understand where you're coming from, but I acknowledge that it's a really small piece of the population. But I would then counterpoint it by saying, well, if it really is just a small piece of the population, not that many people will be harmed if they were excluded.
In my opinion, sports are, like, for a lot of people, including myself, just a phenomenal escape. Also, is like to just stop thinking about other things, and especially someone who is transitioning through has a lot going. They have a lot of things that are happening. So if this is like the one thing that they truly enjoy, like, and love doing, right? In my opinion, it seems wrong to kind of like take that away from them because it is such a, because we're talking about different levels, right? We're talking about like two different, like, high school and collegiate, because you were talking about at the very beginning, just talking about like different, levels of testosterone, but also like ability. The ability level of people in high school level is far less than the people in the collegiate level. Yeah, for sure. So like it's,
gender ability is much closer together, probably.
So there could be someone who is,
totally
god awful, right? At
you can be god awful,
like track, right? Yeah,
and at any gender,
and in any gender.
right. But they're god awful at track, right? And just as an example, because I'm trying to think of a sport that's on both sides,
Sure.
Along with swimming as well. It's the same way. God awful at it, but they love it, right? And that's their favorite thing to do, right? And I would hate for someone who's already made, transitioning and doing all these things and going through such a, tumultuous and like just impactful moment of their life to lose that escape that they get.
And in my opinion, I would hate for all the, what do you call it?
Cisgender women.
All the continued women who were women when they were born.
We had told you the word. Why did you just say the word?
Sounds like such a made-up word.
All words are made up.
It's fine.
At any rate, I would hate for them.
I get it. Yeah, the point. Yeah,
I would hate for them to lose out on what they've trained and competed for because somebody who was good but not good enough before the transition is because of their biological advantage significantly better than all the biological women. Is that right?
I get what
it's almost right.
I get what you're like putting across there.
All right.
Yeah.
All good.
I agree.
It's my opinion that you potentially have more girls harmed by allowing male to female athletes to compete than would be harmed by excluding those athletes. That's my opinion. But we're not trying to convince each other to our position. I'm trying to educate why we think the way we do.
Just picking a different part of the brain.
Yeah.
How would that?
Does deciding which gender sports you compete in, do you think it should be taken into account when the athlete transitions?
No, because there's such a one. From my opinion, it's still such a small size, and also in terms of like the relative newness of this topic in terms of in the sports world itself doesn't give me, I guess, enough examples or like just like knowing about it to like truly have like a solid answer that I want to give. That makes sense.
And 3 cis people sitting here are not going to solve this problem.
Yeah, no.
But we can still talk about it. All right. Any other directions we want to take this? How long have we been talking for, like?
I would just like to finish by seeing if I can repeat and understand your perspective.
Yeah.
Cool.
And see if you can repeat my
Yeah,
perspective.
absolutely.
From what I heard, it sounds like because the universe is reasonably small, you believe someone should be able to compete according to their choice because it won't affect very many people, even because it's rare that somebody is going to be a star that wins everything because, frankly, most athletes just aren't stars. And so why exclude anybody? Is that reasonably accurate?
Yeah, it's reasonably accurate to what I was talking about.
Okay. I understand that perspective.
Yeah. From my understanding of your viewpoint or your opinion about all this is the aspect that you believe that it will do far too much harm to female competitors at any level in regards to having transitioned men to women competing with them where they have not an equal shot to compete and win. And then potentially if there's a spot where people who have transitioned can all compete together, it would be possible, but not so at the moment because it's not a big enough sample size.
Yeah, that's reasonably accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's feasible only because not only is the sample size small, but it's, for all the schools, it's probably not economically feasible.
Logistically, yeah, gotcha.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Shake hands.
This is make out, you know? This has been a hot and spicy episode of Hot Topic. See you next time. Bye. Love you.
All right.